Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trident Talks. I'm Phoebe, I'm the CTI consultant here at Trident Search, and today I'm joined by Ippolito Forni from EclecticIQ. Thank you for joining us, Ippolito.
Thank you, Phoebe. Hello, everybody. My name is Ippolito Forni. I am a senior CTI analyst and a threat intelligence consultant at EclecticIQ, and my main area of expertise is ransomware.
Yeah, so one thing that I think has been captured over the last year is just the sort of exponential increase in ransomware attacks. And so really wanted to get you on to talk about the motivations behind ransomware attacks and who is behind them, and what are the motivations behind these attacks. We've sort of broken it down to around 4, I think we were sort of going to look into. So the first one was really sort of like looking at cybersecurity insurance.
Sure. If that's okay, I'm just going to give an introduction a little bit about the threat landscape for ransomware, because we have seen a massive evolution in the last years. So indeed, ransomware kind of gets really popular, at least kind of goes mainstream with the CryptoLocker. We're talking about many years ago. It's about, I believe, 8 years now. And that's when it kind of became mainstream. But ransomware as a concept, as in holding data for ransom, is much older than that. Actually, the very first ransomware appeared in the 80s. What happened, though, is that with the arrival of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, ransomware threat actors found a way to actually be able to be paid, to monetize, without having to go via traditional financial venues that obviously would actually incur into stopping the funds, freezing the funds, or tracking down the threat actor. So by being able to get ransom paid in cryptocurrency, they actually managed to expand and scale up their venture, because now they didn't have to realize on other money transmitters that could have been kind of a bottleneck for them, or a place where they could get discovered and stopped. So that's why we kind of saw this big, massive increase in ransomware events. And at the very beginning, ransomware actors would actually try to maximize the payout by trying to hit as many machines as possible. So they were not really interested in the type of data that was sitting on this machine. They didn't really care who on this machine. They just hoped that basically by using force and numbers, as at least a small percentage of the machine affected would pay the ransom. And that's why at the very beginning, ransomware attacks were not targeted at all. Actually, if you move a bit forward in time into 2017, everybody remembers WannaCry. In that case, their ransomware was a wormed ransomware, which means that actually was a ransomware with more worming capabilities, could actually expand and propagate by itself by exploiting specific vulnerabilities that were leaked in the open. Yeah, also in that case, because it was spreading like a worm, obviously the ransomware didn't know where it was, which kind of machine it was affecting. So the threat actors, also in that case, even though they managed to compromise systems in about 150 countries, that was really a massive event, the one of WannaCry, the payout at the end, if all the ransoms paid are put together, was around $70,000 US, which by today's amount for ransomware operation is nothing. And the reason behind it was also because, again, the threat actors behind that specific ransomware didn't really target any specific target. It was just hoping that by spreading this worm, eventually somebody would pay. And again, people did pay, but in terms of business model, that was very inefficient from the ransomware threat actor perspective. So what we started seeing in 2018 and what we're still seeing now is what is known as big game hunting. Big game hunting is a type of modus operandi for ransomware threat actors that consist in first selecting the target very specifically. Now, we're not talking about trying to randomly basically spray and pray, try to hit as many targets as possible, hoping that somebody maybe is gonna pay. This is a much more targeted approach, much more mature. So what they actually do with the big game hunting, first they profile their targets. They wanna make sure that they're gonna hit a target that is going to be capable to pay. On top of that, what they're going to do, they're going to go after the crown jewels. So basically what they do, they first breach the system, but they don't deploy the ransomware right away. They actually have a very high dwelling time. That actually means that the time between they breach the system and the time between they actually deploy the ransomware and the victim becomes aware sometimes can be months. What do they do in these months? Well, they do a very extensive reconnaissance. So they stay inside the network, they move laterally, they try to discover everything that is there. because they want first, again, identify the crown jewels. What do I mean by that? The whole point of the ransomware actor being able to monetize revolves around the victim paying the ransom. When is the victim gonna pay the ransom? Well, basically when they have no alternative. So what the threat actors are doing, they're basically subduing the victim into paying the ransom, basically not giving them any alternative. And how do they do that? They hit the data that is most vital to the business continuity of that organization. So basically, in small words, they hit where it hurts the most. And by doing that, they basically force the victim into paying the ransom. The reason why they stay so long, again, is to discover which is this vital data, because the last thing they want to do is to encrypt data that wasn't that vital to the organization. The organization can just go like, well, whatever, even if we don't recover, we're just going to continue. They don't pay. Ransomware threat actor is at a loss. So the ransomware threat actor obviously has costs. They have costs related to the operations, to the people involved, so they don't want to end up at a loss. Their main goal is to monetize, is to make money. So indeed, this system, the Big and Hunt, started working really well, also because in addition to basically identify the most important data, what they would also do, they would identify the location of the backup drives, and they would also hit those. So by the time the ransomware is deployed and the data is encrypted, they have already hit the most fatal data within the environment. They have hit backup drives, basically preventing the victim from being able to restore the encrypted data. So what they have done, they are basically, again, subdue the victim into paying the ransom. And that's why they are now capable, out of a single victim, to extract ransom payments. Now they're in the tens of millions of dollars. Very, very, very high payouts. As we remember at the very beginning, the payouts, like for example, with WannaCry or CryptoLocker, they were like $300, $600. Now we're talking millions. This business model is very successful for a variety of reasons, but they've also kind of improved it because certain organizations, they still manage to kind of continue their operation without paying the ransom and without restoring the data. So what they started doing, they started leveraging a new modus operandi, which is known as double extortion. This started around late 2019, and now everybody's doing it. So basically, in addition to doing big game hunting, in addition to encrypting the data locally, they're also exfiltrating that data. So they're stealing the data. And in case the victim refuses to pay the ransom, what they do, they actually threaten to leave the victim to leak the data on public available sites. Why do they do that? They do that because basically this brings about a whole series of nefarious consequences for the victims. And these are things that can actually make paying the ransom look like the easiest options. Because if when they actually leak that data, well, first off, the victim is gonna incur into GDPR-like fines, because before ransomware, when data was only encrypted locally, it was not considered a data breach. Now the ransomware actors are exfiltrating data, and it's being proven that that's the case pretty much every time. Every ransomware attack should be considered a data breach. And if regulators found out about a company that had a data breach and did a report about it, or the data breach was caused by low security, they're going to incur in fines. With, for example, for the EU, we're talking about tens of millions of euros in fines. So the company, the victim, could actually find itself in the situation that if they don't pay, they're going to have to pay tens of millions of euros to the EU GDPR, or pay a ransom that maybe is 1 million. They may actually end up paying the 1 million to the threat actor. And this is something that is actually happening a lot. Another thing that has an impact, obviously, is not just regulators and fine, but it's brand damage. So now everybody knows that your company got popped, and that's very bad publicity. On top of that, there is also an impact to the stock market, obviously, because the value of your share is going to drop when people find out the organization got breached. And what threat actors could actually do, this hasn't been proven, it's just an hypothesis of mine, but they could also be doing to further monetize these attacks, is to actually select a victim, short the stock of that victim before they actually do the attacks. And shorting the stock means betting against that stock. So actually putting money, saying that stock value is going to go down. And in that case, they can monetize a lot because they do know that the stock value is going to go down, because they are the ones who are going to make the stock value going down by breaching the organization and making it known to the rest of the world. So there's many different techniques that right now threat actors are using to monetize in all different kinds of ways. There's been a further evolution, though, that we have seen, because there's been many of these attacks for these ransomware attacks that in a way kind of look a bit strange. So in the security community, kind of one of the assumption, I would say a bit of even a dogma, is that ransomware attackers, the ransomware threat actors are only after the money. While this is all true, there might be also other things that are occurring behind the scenes that might not be so visible. And what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about threat actors using ransomware as smokescreen for a different goal. Let me give an example. Whenever threat actors are doing double extortion, what they're doing, they're targeting an organization. They're hoping that the organization is going to pay the ransom. The organization doesn't pay the ransom. They exfiltrate the data. They still threaten the organization. Now we're leaking the data. You better pay or else. The victim still doesn't pay. They're at a loss. So what they're going to have to do at that point, they're going to have to try to find somebody on the dark web or in the underground market. They're going to buy the data that they stole from the victim. They might be able to find it or they might not. And even if they do, now they are the one at the loss because they haven't made any money. They're hoping to monetize a little bit of that data. They're probably not going to get a good deal out of it because who's going to decide the price? The buyer at that point. They're the ones who now are at the loss and they're being forced to sell. They're probably going to sell that data at a much lower price. There is a different modus operandi, and it's still an hypothesis at this point, but there's more and more vendors are starting to look into that and concurring that this could be taking place. And there's ransomware as smokescreen for something else, for example, cyber espionage. In this specific business model, the situation will be different. So rather than deciding a target, attacking it, exfiltrating the data, hoping they're going to pay the ransom, and then use the sale of the data as a plan B, a more efficient approach would actually consist in basically selecting the targeted victims beforehand with a third party who could be interested in the stolen data. By third party, I'm clearly talking nation states here. In this specific scenario, what would happen is that a nation state could do espionage operation hiding the goal and the attribution behind the ransomware gang. Yeah. So at that point, the victim, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, they would just think, okay, this is just a ransomware gang trying to make some money, and they would just move on. While in reality, they could be a much bigger espionage operation going on. This is something that I have been talking about for the last 4 months at presentations, and I'm kind of happy to see that in the last few days, there's actually multiple reports that are coming out that are suggesting the very same hypothesis. And particularly one that came, I think, out yesterday, where they're actually talking about Wasted Locker as ransomware and Evil Corp as a ransomware threat actor. Again, there is no conclusive publicly disclosed evidence to prove that is the case. But for example, with the case of Evil Corp, they appear to have some really strong connections with the Russian government, or at least with the with some of the intelligence services of the Russian state. And this might actually suggest that rather than just being a criminal group trying to make money, you can see them online on YouTube making videos driving their Lamborghinis and Ferraris, but they could also be doing something else. So while the victims could just be, okay, we got hit by Evil Corp, they got this big ransom, they got paid. Maybe what is actually happening is that the data that was actually traded is already being passed along again to a third party. The reason that we can find these anomalies, there are actually strong precedents, historically speaking, of ransomware possibly being used for other purposes other than monetization. For example, we have the NotPetya case. Yeah. I believe there was a 2016 when NotPetya ransomware was going around. It was attacking all different kind of victims, but there was a very strange variant of the NotPetya that targeted the central bank of Ukraine, and also an electric power company also in Ukraine by this NotPetya special variant. Now, the strange thing was that this attack happened on the Independence Day of Ukraine, on the National Day for Ukraine. And we also have to put things into context. In 2016 and still now, Ukraine is in proxy warfare with Russia because of after the annexation of Crimea by Russia. There has been basically hybrid warfare going on in the eastern part of Ukraine, where there is an independence movement that want to secede from Ukraine, become part of Russia. They're kind of being funded and held by the Russian government. So even though there is no direct war, there is already a proxy warfare. So all this came at the same time within that context. It actually turns out that this specific malware, there was a strange thing about it. Again, we're thinking ransomware, we're thinking gold, we're thinking monetization. In that case, that specific variant, or NotPetya, did not contain a unique identifier for that malware, for that ransomware variant. So that means that even if the victim wanted to contact the ransomware threat actor to pay the ransom, it would not be able to identify itself, which is kind of strange. You go through all the trouble to do an attack and a ransomware attack, and then you slip on something so basic, which basically results in you not getting paid. It's either that this is a ransomware group that is really, really dumb, or maybe this ransomware group wasn't really interested for the money, wasn't really after the money. There was not their main goal, but still they needed to keep appearances.
Yes.
We saw more of that. Like the most recent one that we actually saw, there was actually something that occurred. I think it was a report that just came out from TrueSec, and it was actually from 2 days ago, where they're actually pushing the very same hypothesis. And in this case, it's about Hades ransomware. Same thing, ransomware deployed, no way to pay the ransom. So basically lacking of identifier, or just lacking of contact details. Or in some case, the contact details are there and Hades is not responding. That's kind of strange.
In this situation, this is very much the ransomware being used as a smokescreen, just purely for destructive purposes. That, as you say, there's no follow through for the ransom to actually be paid. That it's just a cover, just to sort of cause some chaos.
Yeah, it's either the smoke screen can be for different purposes. So far in my investigation, what I've noticed, I've seen a ransomware use a smoke screen for destruction purposes. In that case, was a ransomware which was basically used as a wiper. We're talking about, I think it was a ransomware attack against an Israeli company. That said, there was some attribution made. It seems like that the ransomware was used by an Iranian threat actor. In that case, same thing. Ransomware encrypted the data, but did not provide a way to retrieve the key. So the ransomware threat actors didn't get paid, which again, from a ransomware business model perspective, is just dumb. It makes no sense. From a espionage campaign or cyber warfare campaigns, it makes a whole lot of sense. Same thing in that case, basically ransomware uses wipers. So ransomware, is smoke screen for destructive attacks. We have also seen ransomware use a smoke screen for financial attacks, where the actual ransom was not the goal. That's not that we're making money. And we saw that twice, particularly by the Lazarus group. That's a North Korean APT, sponsored APT. In that case, they actually attacked multiple banks. And what they did, they attacked the bank, they deployed the ransomware, which started encrypted data on some office system. So while major chaos was going on in the organization, not all the systems were encrypted. Some of the systems that were not encrypted, one of them was the platform where the SWIFT international banking payment system were sitting on. That system back in the day had some vulnerabilities. So what Lazarus did, they deployed the ransom, they basically distracted the entire IT security team into focusing on trying to recover basically the system that were attacked by ransomware. And as they were focused on doing that, Lazarus was on the SWIFT payment platform, siphoning out and sending tens of millions of dollars to mule accounts.
So they started a fire on one side to see, so that was presumed to be the main attack, and actually that was a distraction for the actual end goal, which was completely separate.
Yeah, so basically the riot, by the front door while they were breaking in from the back door. Yeah. Exactly, distraction.
And you mentioned earlier as well about ransomware as a smokescreen usually for nation state actors, and how threat actors are contracted by government bodies, and then the data that they acquire is provided like straight to that nation state. I think an example of that is RYUK. And so how can that, as a ransomware attack, how is that spotted, and how is it sort of attributed to maybe this is linked to a nation state? When it comes to dumping that data, on the deep and dark web, is it that the data that's dumped is quite useless in the end, because actually all the relevant important data has been provided elsewhere? Is that does that provide a few indicators that actually this was the motivation behind that specific ransomware attack?
Well, yeah, it could be, but I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be really hard for the victim to tell if they've been targeted for real monetization purposes, or if they've been targeted for something bigger, for like a cyber espionage. But what is really important that even though the victim might not have visibility, law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, they're going to have that visibility. So what is of utmost important is that when victims get targeted by ransomware, many organizations are very much tempted not to ever report about it, because obviously they don't want to have bad publicity. But what's happening there is that that small ransomware attack against your small company could be a small piece of a much bigger puzzle. So if you report that to your nation's law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies, they might be able to pick that little piece of the puzzle, put it together with the rest, and understand that there is a much bigger campaign going on. I'm just kind of throwing out there, SolarWinds, wink wink. We're talking about many different organizations kind of popped at different times, and the whole thing being leveraged together. So
Building
as a victim,
puzzle picture.
exactly. So as a victim, you might never even know or be able to tell if you were targeted by just a cyber gang looking to make some money, or if you actually were targeted by a nation state. But it's of utmost important that you report this to your law enforcement, national organizations, and intelligence agencies, because they are the ones that could be able to actually tell that that is going on. And even if your organization is very small, that doesn't mean that you could not be attacked by this kind of attack, because particularly if your organization is supporting national interest, you become a very juicy target.
Yes, but as you mentioned earlier, with the fact that, ransomware doesn't just sort of affect, a data breach or, financial issues within the company, it also affects the reputation of the company. And as you say, they might incur fines. So is there an issue there that lots of companies don't, especially if they're small ones, lots of companies don't actually report these ransomware attacks? So building out that picture actually gets harder because that not all the pieces of the puzzle are being given to the right, law enforcement agencies.
Absolutely. And by the way, I like to stress out, this is not just an issue with the medium and small companies, even big corporations are doing that. So this kind of silence, or should we call it omerta, or I don't know what you call it, but still not talking about it, not speaking up, not bringing these activities into light is making the life of threat actors, ransomware threat actors, extremely easy because they know about this. And in fact, I have heard of when it comes down to small companies, the vast majorities of the small companies that were targeted by ransomware that I know about were because I was notified personally by these people. This wasn't stuff that was reported. So I can speak that for a fact this is happening. And ransomware actors know that, particularly when it comes also to small organization, even if you step aside from the bigger picture of their ransomware as smokescreen, even just for the cyber criminal gangs. For example, targeted like a small lawyer firm, I don't know, with 2, 3, 4 employees. In that case, they know damn well that they can make a few grants really easily because that company is going to be able to afford that. And that company is going to stay silent. They're not going to say a word, and they're just going to hit all the others one after the other. This is a major issue because basically LEO, a law enforcement organization, intelligence agencies, I believe their visibility is much lower than it could be. But there is a flip side to that coin, and it's understandable to a certain extent, is that up until this point, the approach of most law enforcement agencies in Europe and the US has been just don't pay the ransom. Don't pay the ransom because if you pay the ransom, you're going to be financing future ransomware attacks. That's very true. But there's really not much value to tell this to an organization that has already been popped. Because that organization at that point is like, yeah, I don't want to finance or sponsor future threat actors, but I don't want my company out of business. And guess what? I'm not going to sacrifice my organization for the greater good. No company on earth is going to do that. So it's unrealistic, in my opinion. The change that is coming finally, and I've been preaching this for a long time, now there is the International Ransomware Task Force. This is an effort that just started in the US, but they want to expand, trying to get public and private together, but particularly also trying to get some kind of diplomatic effort. Because we're not going to get out of this ransomware drama if nation states keep basically kind of not agreeing on a common framework. Because if there's no cooperation among nation states, there are always going to be safe havens where threat actors can operate, make a lot of money, and then make videos while they're driving Lamborghinis with no repercussions.
And also, you sort of mentioned when we initially discussed that there is there's also a lack of justice, even if people maybe do report, there isn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily deliver justice at the end. You know, there are countries that fail to prosecute threat actors. So even those who do speak up, it doesn't necessarily, you know, follow through that they're then going to receive the justice that they deserve. And additionally, going back to, I guess, that the ransomware attacks are increasing, not only just through, you know, lack of justice, but also you're saying that entry barriers for ransomware are becoming easier, and it's a lot easier for actors to get hold of ransomware. You basically buy it off the shelf these days.
Absolutely. That is what is known as a ransomware as a service. And it's an extremely successful business model. It's been around for a while. It's obviously copying the same idea as malware as a service. That'll also been around for a while. Why is this really successful? Well, basically, they managed to kind of compartmentalize a little bit the different roles and activities. Back in the day, if you wanted to be a ransomware threat actor, you either had to kind of develop your own ransomware, and then you would have to focus on the operation itself. Now, we're talking about two very different set of skills. You could have a good programmer that's going to design a really awesome ransomware, and he's going to be really bad in operation security at executing that specific attack. The other way around, you could have like a great hacker that knows about systems, how to get in there and move laterally, but he can't code at all. And in that case, he's going to make a crappy ransomware that is going to be detected. So what they started doing, they started basically focusing on the specific skill set. So what they started doing is basically you will now have groups that are not doing a ransomware attack. They're just focusing purely 100% on developing the ransomware package itself. And then they provide it to affiliates who then don't have to worry about coding it. They're just gonna take it off the shelf and they're gonna execute the operation. The payout is normally split between the developer and the affiliate. So there's different percentages that are given, but basically when the ransom is paid, the developer gets a chunk of the money and the affiliate gets a part of the money. Okay. And by doing that, basically both wins. Some of these groups started becoming really, really, really professional about that, because obviously they don't just develop the ransomware and put it there. They provide patches, features, support tickets. I mean, sometimes they're more professional than actual legit companies in the way they provide their service.
Wow.
And what they also started doing, basically they encourage affiliates. So affiliates that perform really well, affiliates that are executing attacks that are bringing in a lot of money, they actually get their percentage increase. So they basically get a salary raise. Affiliates that are not performing properly, boom, they get fired out of the game. So they incentivize the good ones, they kick out the ones that don't perform well. And therefore, they're actually building up like massive teams of affiliates who now are becoming entire armies attacking all over the place. And yeah, this system has been extremely successful. It has lowered the entry barrier, as you said, because again, now if you want to be a ransomware threat actor, and this is not to, kind of get people to start doing
encourage that. Anyone at home.
I don't want to encourage it. You could get caught, you could end up in jail. Don't do that. But still, for the people that have the bad idea of doing that, it's becoming extremely easy because you don't really need coding skills any longer. You just need a target, basically. And you get the ransomware, you send it off, and you try to make your money. And particularly now, after 2020, the old pandemic and people losing their jobs, there is also an overall insecurity situation where I can see, well, I'm not justifying, I can understand that certain people might see that as a very tempting way of making money quick. Yeah. And that's also why they're becoming really, really popular, particularly if we think about Eastern Europe, where you have very smart people with great education, but a very bad job market. Again, not justifying, but I could understand how some of that shift could go there. And without a diplomatic effort on a global level to get all the countries on the same page when it comes down to ransomware, the situation is just going to get worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And conversely, not just on the threat actor side of it being quite a lucrative endeavor, but also, given something like COVID that gone through this last year, and this probably ties into the increase in attacks. It's forced SMEs like into an environment, I guess, they aren't so clued up on. So does that then come into it as well? That lots more companies have sort of been pushed into this like digitization of their services, or of their sort of running of their organization, and it's a field that they're not familiar with, and that's been taken advantage of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the digitization of the entire business realm, because even the companies that were not doing business online before kind of started moving on, because there was kind of the only option. Even local coffee shops started having to sell their stuff online because it was the only way of doing business. And yes, absolutely. They can become a prime target of all different kind of attacks. I mean, even big organizations that have been out there for years are not mature. Imagine the ones that are just starting now. So yeah, that's very true. It's increasing the attack surface. And again, bonanza for the ransomware threat actors.
And so looking at the sort of how companies can protect themselves, before even this is an issue and they have to sort of pay a ransom, I guess one sort of quite obvious solution is cybersecurity insurance. Within that, there is like ransomware, outlined as a clause, but that we were discussing that isn't an effective sole, mitigation against ransomware, and it can almost lead to you being targeted if that information that you have, that insurance is leaked to threat actors. It's almost a double-edged sword that they then know there's a guarantee of a payout.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I am not against cyber insurance per se. I think they can be complementary to a real increase and effort to increase security in organization. But there are many things that are happening right there that I'm seeing happening. Now, first and foremost, companies are abusing these cyber insurances. So what they're doing, they're basically buying insurance, and they think that that's a tick on their security box, and then they don't have to worry about increasing their security posture. That's an illusion, very short-sighted, because while you might get the financial issue maybe covered at first, you're giving yourself the illusion of security, and you could actually become even more of a target. Why that is the case? Well, for example, with the ransomware threat actors and ransom payouts, many companies saw the cyber insurance as a shortcut not to have to worry about ransomware threat actors. Again, that's extremely naive, borderline dumb that they're doing that, because what is happening with that? Well, they're not spending any money, for example, into CTI, increasing security, into the SOC department. They're getting that insurance policy, and that's gonna take care of things if things go bad. Not true. Well, first, what you're doing, you're basically, you have a central place, an insurance company, that now, as you on a list that says this company is covered by a policy. So if that insurance company was to get popped anytime in the future, the ransomware threat actor will find itself a nice list of all the customers, including the amounts that they are capable of paying. So he knows who to target and how much money to ask, down to the cent. On top of that, again, cyber insurance is not security. So the very first concern should be about increasing the security posture. And that means spending money. I know that's something that CFOs, CEOs don't like to hear. Security is a cost, but if you compare it to the cost you're gonna have to face in case of a breach, that is really nothing. So increasing the security posture, again, invest in your SOC, in your incident response. Bring the cyber threat intelligence into your security stack if you haven't done so. Why is that? Because CTI allows you to be proactive, allows you to be aware about the threat landscape out there, and basically implement mitigation before you get attacked. Because we're always talking about, you don't want to be reactive, you want to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Being reactive to ransomware, it's too late. Another thing are very, very basic things that companies are still not doing. And I'm talking about security hygiene here, very basic one. Example, your disaster recovery process. Many companies, they have disaster recovery processes, which basically consist in a Word document that is sitting someplace that says, if things go boom, we're gonna do A, B, C, D, E. They get attacked by ransomware, They go to that document, they follow A, B, C, D, E, and they find out that it doesn't work. Well, too late at that point. You need to run drills, proper drills. Pretend you've been attacked by ransomware and make sure that you can indeed recover that data from your backups. Because again, if you cannot recover it and you find out after being attacked, ooh, too late then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, not against cyber insurance, but cyber insurance should not be seen as the field that fixes. Exactly. No, it can be complementary, absolutely. But right now it's being abused. And by the way, I have to say, this is also the fault of insurance companies, because now they're changing it. But before, with the cyber insurance policies, they wouldn't really enforce and make sure that certain requirements will be met by the organization before giving that kind of insurance. So again, it was like a free-for-all. I think that they're changing that now. And they're starting, for example, to ask for requirements. Like, we're not going to provide you a policy unless you meet all these security requirements, which makes much more sense.
Okay, is it so things like, having an internal SOC, actually having maybe looking to like threat intelligence internal division, or working with an MSSP, that sort of thing, already having those requirements in place before they then are able to get a cybersecurity policy? Because as you say, otherwise it will just lead to lots of people resting on their laurels, resting on that policy as, ticking a box, as you say, and to the powers that be, the C-suite, it looks as if they've done their job and they're protected.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm just going to bring an analogy here. When you want to insure your car, they ask you a bunch of things, not least if you have a driving license. They're not going to give you a car insurance unless you have a driving license. It makes sense, right? Because if you can't drive, you're going to break that car right away and they're going to have to pay. They should do the same thing for cyber.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, I guess to sort of wrap up, from your end, you touched on a few things about, what needs to be done to sort of decrease the number of ransomware attacks across the board. And it all seems to sort of fall onto like proactivity rather than reacting and once it's happened. And as you say, you're running drills so that when there actually is a real scenario, it's something that should be second nature. And with this new task force that's been formed, that's a really good start in terms of collaboration and data sharing globally. And yeah, that sort of building across the globe. And it's a topic that sort of comes up a lot now of data sharing between either nation states or companies themselves. So are those, would you say, the main points to build out when looking to decrease ransomware? Are there anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it starts from the basics, really from the ABC. Like, basic security hygiene should be there. And I'm going to keep repeating this because I still see organizations that are not getting the message. So again, like, I'm really talking basic, like proper security deployment, SELs, vulnerability management system, like a proper incident response system, security tool, like really the basics. Once you got the basics down, you can kind of take it up a notch with a proactive approach, and that is cyber threat intelligence. Now, obviously, I work for an intelligence shop, but still, I think that's extremely important. And that is because, the Chinese general Sun Tzu said 2,400 years ago, if you need to know yourself and know the enemy. So if you're not aware about your weaknesses, but the threat actor is, you're going to succumb. If you're not aware about the modus operandi and the TTPs that a ransomware threat actor are going to use, you're still going to succumb. You need to be aware about your capability and match that against the threat actor capability. How do you do that? You do that with CTI. Because it's cyber threat intelligence that provides you the context, not just of what is happening, but what might be happening tomorrow or what it could be happening behind the shadows. And that is the only way, in my opinion, to actually have some hope that you're going to be able to be prepared if that time comes. And if you can set your defenses strong enough, it's always, the analogies that I bring, again, you don't need to run faster than the bear. You need to run faster than the guy that is running with you. So at the end of the day, if somebody wants to go after your company, they're going to pop you no matter what. There's no such a thing as a 100% secret system, but you want to make their lives as hard as possible. And all the security system are to be put into place with CTI on top, so that you actually do that, so that ransomware victims are gonna go like, okay, I'm really having a hard time here. Maybe we should move on.
Yeah, and absolutely. So I mean, we're both quite maybe biased, I guess, me being a CTI consultant, you obviously working within EclecticIQ, but there is a quite a difference, isn't there, between the security operations and internal, more reactive, and then, as you say, the proactive CTI. So I know that it's not necessarily a priority for lots of organizations, but what would you say in terms of if someone already has a SOC and incident responders, that sort of thing, what would you say to sort of push them to then think about implementing like a CTI division?
Well, I think that is an effort that pretty much every organization should look into. Even this sort of organization might not be able to afford like a full-time CTI team. That doesn't mean you cannot do CTI. Now, CTI used to be kind of its own beast, and now it's kind of merging together with all the rest. And the CTI more and more is present inside SOCs. So if you already have a SOC running, you can implement CTI within the SOC. And that is going to be, I think, working really well, because you're going to have the people doing the SOC incident response kind of work, kind of already looking into the CTI. So these are the people that are responding, basically putting out fires. Mm-hmm. If you can give them some visibility into what might come next, they're going to be even better at putting out fires, because they're going to know, the fire that is burning next to the gas tank is not the same thing as the fire that is burning outside in the field. So that context is going to be extremely helpful. One word for the organization that can indeed afford to have a CTI team, or maybe already have a CTI team. A major issue that I have seen in my life as a CTI analyst is what I call the CTI ivory tower syndrome. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? Is that in many cases, I've seen CTI teams kind of work in a very enclosed environment, almost if they were like inside their own cocoon, their own bubble. Mm-hmm. So they will generate intelligence. They would feed it to the SOC, to stakeholders and managers and all that. But then they kind of started forgetting that they were not doing intelligence for the sake of intelligence. They're actually providing a service, a product to a consumer. So the intelligence they're doing should support decision-making mm-hmm. of the consumer. It's not an academic type of effort per se, just to find further knowledge. And that's the issue that I've seen in many teams. They don't get feedback. They don't like to hear about feedback. They provide a bunch of intelligence to the SOC, but then the SOC kind of looks at them and be like, okay, so what about this, blah, blah, blah. But no, they're not going to talk. We are the CTI team. No, this has to be on a peer-to-peer level. So what I also suggest is to take, maybe if it's possible, somebody from the CTI team mm-hmm. embedded in the SOC team. Show them what life is in the trenches. And mm-hmm. so you'll be better understand the kind of intelligence product that is going to be most helpful to the soldiers in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ippolito. I really appreciate it.
It did. Thank you so much, Phoebe. It was a pleasure.